So the more certainty you have, the more easy it is to make these lump sum bids. All right. So we're going back to general average, and that's the definition we just talked about. So let's go to a practical case of that. And let's say you're in Houston and you think, hey, I want to export some classic American sports car, and I'm going to put them in a container. And instead of doing it by truck, I'm going to put it on a container ship, and it's heading to Mexico or to Europe or something like that. But unfortunately, this happens, and actually, you could say the box with the sports car in it is actually it's not completely lost, but it's also damaged by it. So, and realize that general average is all about value, right? It's all about money. So, fire breaks out on a ship at $1 million with $3 million worth of cargo. Yeah, so that's $4 million in total of value at the start of the voyage. After the fire, the vessel had to be scrapped and sold for scrap, and you get $100,000 for it. Probably a little bit more if the size of this ship, but let's just keep to that. So they lost $900,000 after the incident. The salvor, basically the firefighting and returning the vessel to a safe harbor, cost about $500,000, which is pretty cheap for a job like this. And $900,000 worth of cargo is lost. And the administrative cost following the events are $50,000. Believe me, if you have a general average case this size, you're going to be swamped with consultants. Because if this thing goes alongside, and you need to, basically every box needs to go to shore, it needs to be opened, and it needs to be inspected by several surveyors to establish what is really the value. So think about this, if you have I was involved in a case in the south of England, MSC Napoli, which is, I think it was 4,000 or 5,000 TEU. And just the space that you're going to need to store these containers on shores is going to be enormous. And I think if you have like I think the biggest one right now is 23,000 TEU, the MSC Gulson. It cannot get into the Port of Houston, but there's not enough space in the Port of Houston to store all those containers. So just think about the logistics that you're going to be involved of that if you're going to be running into that. So, okay, so $4 million before the event. After the event, $2,200, $2.2 million, and handling costs. So basically, the cost of loss due to the incident, $2.350 million, or 58.75%. Keep these percentages in mind. So, let's say these two cars are worth $25,000, and there's a little bit of damage to it, some paint damage maybe, or fire damage, or any kind of damage. So there was a reduction in value. Then the owner of this container basically would get a general average proceed, would basically get money, right, of $10,000. But they also need to, they also get a bill for the 58.75%, which is $14,688. So that's basically how the general average works. Okay. Who determines the general average? Basically, when the ship, the captain or the shipping company, they're probably the ones that are going to declare general average, basically asking you to contribute in solving this issue. And also on that side, just to keep track of all the costs and the value of all the different cargoes of all these containers, is going to be a very hectic job. So realize, if you have a container on the ship that's in distress and is brought in, it's probably going to take a long time before you're going to have that cargo back in your hands. So, in order to speed this thing up, what you will probably see as a cargo owner is once the ship is into port, safely into port, and they can start discharging. And here's a good case. This is the Yantayan Express on the North Atlantic last year. is that they will go and reach out to the cargo owner, and they will ask for a general average security. And the salver, because he wants to make sure that he gets paid as well, because obviously the cargo is also part of the salvage claim, they want to see a salvage security. So it's of the essence, when you make a shipment like that, that you have the proper cargo insurance, and that the insurance that you have is also covers the general average. Because if you don't have that, then your insurance company will not help you. And then somehow you have to provide the salvage security and the general average security. But if you don't know how to do that, you actually need to make a cash deposit to get your cargo back. So that's an important one there as well. You see general average a lot in container ships. There's many parties involved. And last year was really a big year, and a lot of container ships actually went on fire. So maybe we're seeing a trend here. That's a good one, or maybe it's just 1 year of bad luck. But it happens a lot, and I think with the size of these container ships, that actually the chances of one of these containers having an issue and going on fire is getting bigger. So be aware of that when you're shipping like that. And as you can see, the Maersk Conan that we talked about earlier was also a general average case. Okay, if you like this topic and you want to read more about it, on Sunday afternoon with a glass of wine, here are some really good books about it. They're none of mine, so don't worry about that, but they really explain a lot of these topics very well. I mean, there's Imperial, we just talked about, the space shuttle tank. That's the US Gulf story. Gracie Zunder, that's actually Canadian. Jan de Hartog is a Dutch story, and Wilbur Smith is a South African. And they talk a lot about Lloyd's Open Forms and Scotpic and salvage cases in the past. There you go. Alright, I also have a YouTube channel. If you go to my website, there's a little YouTube icon, and if you click on there, there's a database of about 50, 60 salvage cases in the past, and probably when you watch them all, you can make an application as a professional salver. So. Alright, any questions? Yeah, gentleman in the back.
Can you give us a simple 1 or 2 line solution for a prudent shipper placing insurance?
Well, prudent shipper, like I said, make sure general average is including in your cargo insurance, and make sure you have that cargo insurance. But as prudent, you also have to think about making sure that, and we see this really a lot in these container cases, make sure that you describe on a manifest what's really in the container. I've seen a case in the MSC Napoli is one of them. It's actually a container ship that broke in two, and a lot of that had to do with misrepresenting the actual weight of the container. And you can imagine these huge vessels, if there's mistakes made in the loading, the forces that can develop in these container ships are huge, and they actually break open. We had the MSC Napoli with the Mole Comfort. There was another case in the Indian Ocean. That vessel actually broke in half, and both of the sections sank and never made it to port. So make sure what's in there, and if there is dangerous good in there, like the charcoal briquettes or the lithium batteries, so make sure that's on there, so the shipper of the ship owner knows where to put that container. Because if you put it on the bow, and you're going to be exposed to spray and water, that might actually be in sort of ignition. There's a famous case in Egypt where a small container vessel actually went on the beach, and what you typically do is you put the really dangerous cargo also far away from the accommodation. And there the US Navy, or not the US Navy, the Egyptian Navy became involved in the salvage operation, and they thought it was actually a good idea to use a helicopter and to dump water onto the nitro peroxide or something. So think about that. When you have a ship with containers, appoint a salver, right? Lloyd's Open Form, if it's really a case of are we going to make it, yes or no, and that something needs to happen now, and you don't want to deal with lengthy contract negotiations, go for the Lloyd's Open Form. It's the contract in the last couple of years have been used less and less and less, but actually it is the best way to save your ship and the cargo. And obviously, if there's time, you can bring in a tugboat and all those things. Yeah, then it's probably better to go on some kind of daily rate system. But if the shit hits the fan, then just sign the LOF and make sure that that's your biggest chance of actually bringing ship and cargo back to port.
Just to make it clear, no matter if my cargo contributed to the general average, I
Yeah.
will have to contribute to
Yes.
the general average.
Everybody, yeah, because think about this kind of developed in. Imagine this: so we have a container ship and it's sinking, all right? And then we're thinking, okay, what do we need to do to save the ship? Well, we got to throw cargo overboard. Okay, guys, whose cargo wants to go first, right? That's kind of how where that came from. It's already old. It's a system that's also like 100 years old. So the cargo that gets thrown overboard, that saves the ship. Is obviously that is going to be compensated for that, and the other ones all chip in to pay the salvor and the lost damage. So it's a pretty smart system on how to do it. Yes, ma'am.
Just looking at the photographs that you showed today, and some of the containers are untouched. I mean, they're still viable or good. So I mean, when an incident like that happens, does the adjuster just evaluate the containers that were affected, or is it the entire ship?
No, the entire ship. Yeah,
The entire
that will look
ship's
at
out.
that. Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So the container all the way on the bow, you say, well, if this fire is put out, right? The container all the way in the bow, does it have any damage? I mean, not very likely. They're going to inspect it. They're going to say, yeah. And yes, your insurance, if you have it, is going to have to pay for the general average ship plan. Yeah. Yeah. So realize that. Make sure you have that general average cover in your insurance.
But when the container wasn't attached, sorry, it's gone.
Oh, yeah.
And you have
So your container is perfectly fine. You still need a chip in. Yeah. Yeah, that's yeah. So you can put it on a truck. It's probably more expensive, but.
So did we ease your nightmares or add to it? Well, I took away from it a job opportunity. I didn't really like cruises, but maybe I'll learn how to be on the water so I can help salvage a vessel in the near future. It seems like big money. But we would like to thank you for your participation, and then we would like to